Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here. So what we will do now is reports from the various teams. So Eleonora and me will report from the science team, co-leads before we start with this. So until spring this year, Lena Noack was also the co-lead of the science team, but she's currently transitioned to have more administrative roles with her local collaborations. So she wanted to take a step back from the leadership of the science team. And so Eleonora and me do this most of the time now. So what we will do in this short report is essentially here, shortly outlined here. So we'll, again, for everyone who is also new potentially, or for whom this is the first all-hands meeting, we'll explain the basic idea behind the science team. We cover a few of the past activities, including some in-person meetings. And then there's this, what was earlier mentioned before by Daniel already and Lorenzo, this community paper process that we tried out this year the first time. So I'll report on that, and then Eleonora will continue on with the progress report with respect to the last year science team meeting, which was in Berlin. We'll come to that, outline a little bit the structure of the science team meetings and the purpose of this, and then discuss the upcoming calendar. Okay, so why the science team? Several people, or many of you, have seen this slide before. It's a few years old by now. Essentially, the question is why is a mission like life necessary? We often get this question. Isn't HWO covering everything already? Is it, why do we have a space mission, etc., etc.? And then many very good, very qualitative and also quantitative arguments for doing this. Here, you see listed a few. For example, that you need to constrain the pressure temperature structure of exoplanet atmospheres. For doing that effectively, for having no degeneracy between planet size and cloud albedo feedback, you need to have some infrared coverage. And there are several others. But what we really want to understand is, because the mission is not yet defined and it's in very much detail, as we've heard multiple times yesterday and today already, we essentially in the science team asked the question from a science first perspective. So we asked the question, we have process X, process Y, that can be a biosignature, for example, that we expect on a life as we know it inhabited planet, or we can expect an abiotic process that we think is extremely crucial to better constrain with future spacecraft. And then we turn the question around: what type of mission would we need to be able to confidently constrain this process? For example, constrain the statistics of this process or constrain the magnitude of this process. And with this, we aim essentially, so this is more from a community crowd-driven aspect, to cover all the different aspects that come into exoplanet science. And we discover new ones by the day, right? Exoplanet science is an extremely dynamic field. I don't think any one of us can really stay up to date with the literature and the amounts of paper published already. So we try to incorporate those aspects dynamically and sort of ask the question, how would this shape the mission, essentially? So what we've done in the past is some of these activities. The only person you can see here not looking into the camera is myself. That's great. So this is from the science team meeting in person that Lena organized, that Lena Noack organized at the Free University of Berlin. I think this was in September 2023, if I remember correctly. So essentially, this was the first in-person meeting, and we will continue doing these things from time to time, which, in addition to the virtual meetings that Eleonora will outline later on, sort of serve as a reconnection to the community, with the community. We had this year was not a general life science team, but it was more a local one, what was organized more from the Dutch and Belgian community together. So I'm really not gifted, as you can see, for these group photos. So I try to get this group photo done, and then I stand outside of the group photo, but this is how it goes, I guess. So we organize these meetings at international conferences, local conferences, and we also try to bring in some participation of live team members at international conferences that are organized anyway. So what I want to talk for now for about 5 to 10 minutes is about this, the idea of this community-driven process for papers and why it's necessary. So if you look back into the different types of papers that were published with live, and I mean mostly the mainline live papers that have large interferometer for exoplanets and then a number in its title, but also the sort of ancillary papers that do not have this naturally necessarily in the title, but also are dominantly motivated by life. They have some differences in them, and I want to discuss here and why we had some discussions in across several teams why it may be wise to have these sort of community papers that engage a wider part of the live team essentially. So the first one here is that we have is what I already said, the intra and extra community engagement. So we found that especially early career researchers that are here at this particular meeting and find it sometimes difficult to connect with the team. Essentially, it's unclear when you hear about it, you join the team. It's unclear how you actually sort of connect with the science and the workings and the research projects that are going on in the live team overall. That's one way of how sort of more community driven or more community engaged papers can constructively sort of lead to a better communication across the team. And then there's to receive constructive suggestions. If the teams are small, then of course the input into the projects remains limited. That also increases the reach of live papers toward different communities, so we can make sure that from the beginning of these projects or in the middle of these projects, we receive actually feedback from a wider variety of communities. By that I mean, for example, interfacing with earth science and planetary science communities that are not dominantly represented actually in our collaboration so far. Second point is that the live community papers enhance clearly the visibility of the science team and generally the live community as a whole. For example, the first community paper, essentially Live 1, is much more widely visible than follow-up work. Then second, actually, potential funders like ESA or other donors essentially expect the demonstration to see the broad basis of the live science case. And I guess this varies from organization to organization, but in particular, ESA expects the community to do the preparatory work already before anything is funded. So we try to flesh out the science cases for this. Lastly, seed new projects. So the stimulate for follow-up papers is actually very much enhanced, as we found during this review process this year, this community paper process this year. And finally, we believe that when we can engage and incorporate many more members of the community, it will be easier for the community members and the team members to actually receive follow-up funding, because they can demonstrate the involvement in networking and their interaction with the team already, which will make it easier to apply for successful funding afterwards. So here you see some of these papers. So this is Live 1, this is Live 14 that Lorenzo just presented, and also here's Glauser and SPIE from this year, which also is a paper like this. There's of course a few potential downsides here. The question is, how do you allocate fair authorship, and in particular for early career researchers? How do you deal with possibly large amounts of feedback? It may increase the lead times of these paper or research project submissions, and generally the organization overhead. There's of course some management aspect that comes to this that is not there if you stay within a small team. So I will shortly describe this project of Lorenzo, which he presented earlier, how this worked. So originated from the bachelor's thesis of Lorenzo and sort of included updated and better instrument model and sensitivity calculations from a LEADER project, or a predecessor project from a few years ago. So the timeline of this was roughly as follows. Lorenzo defended his thesis last year. We extended the simulation sort of until early this year, and then we sent an invite to the science team by January this year. I received suggestions by spring 2024 and then submitted it roughly I think in May or June or something like this. And they received the reviews in 2024 in August, implemented them by September, and the paper was accepted in October. So how did we do this? So we used an internal peer feedback system. So that was partly to get actually feedback from the community, and also actually to make people think about life in their daily lives. When people just read papers that are published in the archive, that is a much less deep sort of interaction with the paper than when you actually potentially part of this. And so we received 56 responses from ranging from relatively brief and top-level feedback to very detailed and very useful responses. It was, of course, quite substantial work to incorporate these, but I think it was definitely worth it. Then there was an additional co-authorship application where people highlighted what they had suggested and how they could rank themselves, what their contribution to the community and this particular paper was. Both were optional, but encouraged to fill out both. And these forms were partly based on the authorship guidelines created for the JWST ERS and Compass collaborations that tried out new ways of collaborations across large teams. I said most of this already. The paper got accepted. We received very good suggestions from people in the collaborations who were not previously involved in the project at all. So I believe we brought many people additionally to the live team that were so far mostly sitting passively in the background. We received very good feedback that certainly improved the paper, and it highlighted, I would say, 5 to 6 several new directions of potential study, ranging from accretion paths, detailed atmospheric characterization of protoplanets, like Peter already asked the question early on, stellar multiplicity, improved accessory models, and so on. Yeah, how to credit authorship here is, if you look into this in detail, what we've used here is a 3-tier model where most of the authors who contribute most to the study sit in a tier one authorship level. Then there's a second tier and a third tier, depending on the level of interaction with the community and the particular paper. So before I give over to Eleonora, so we learned some lessons, for example, that includes giving more time for feedback, possibly merge the authorships form that we use to simplify the process, and possibly present the main results several times in the science team meeting itself before writing up the full draft, which would make it easier for the community to interact with this. The principal idea of this was taken up partly by Glauser, but without the feedback process and without the author vetting. So I think we have to discuss somehow in the future how we want to proceed with this. I think just as a general wrap-up, I think the pros of this are really that these papers receive much more publicity and engagement of the community. And ultimately, this leads to more rigorous science and a better fleshing out of the live mission. Well, of course, there's no plans to make this mandatory. This will remain optional. But we will encourage the use of this across the community. And who is interested in this can please reach out to us. And I think I'll give over to Eleonora from here.
Great. Thank you, Tim. My task was to complete a progress report of what happened in the past year, and we can start from the life science meeting last year. So the various projects that we had were clustered in a variety of domains, and I continued to do that, trying to work with what I was given and add to it. Okay, next slide, please. So I tried to create what I call a flower plot. Essentially, this is the science space that the life science team is currently handling. And all the numbers that you see over there are all projects that are currently going on or recently concluded in the past year from the life science team. So there are a variety of domains, as we've seen. We will go through each of them, but one thing that is important to note at this stage is that there is an overlap between the various domains, obviously, and because every project can deal with a set of research questions that would need to be answered. And so I expect in the future this plot to evolve and get even more complicated. This is, if you want, this is our first sweep at what we try to do in the science team. Next slide. All right, starting off with the blue petal. Habitability and climate. So these are all the projects that deal with how do we get an habitable planet and how important it is to find a habitable planet and how to recognize a habitable planet. So in this case, we are talking about ocean worlds, finding water clouds, even studying the importance of the null result and 3D effects with chemistry, phase curves, surface, process-based biosignatures, isotopolog, and trend detections in this case. You can see here all of the projects that are going on in this petal, and the ones that have a tick mark are the ones that are recently submitted or completed, and the ones with a stopwatch are the ones that are very close to be completed. or in an advanced stage to our knowledge. Surely this will change as time goes on. Next slide, please. And then we go to the green petal, the life detection, which it maybe is one of the more advanced ones in terms of progress, because obviously this is the prime goal for the life space mission. And so you see here we studied all of the detectability of a variety of biosignatures, and we're still going on with that in that sense. This is the petal that has the latest project that we added just last week about the surface biosignatures and what the impact could be in terms of outgassing gases to that could be visible in the mid infrared. Next slide. And then we have diversity. So we have there is not just a habitable planets. We're going to observe a lot of different kinds of planets, especially in this case magma oceans, like what we've just seen that Lorenzo just explained more about. But there's also Haitian planets, SEAM atmosphere, Venus-like. And there is a lot going on in this area. Also here we can also see the performance that the recently completed Life 10, I want to say, HWO plus Life that Oscar wrote about the first comparisons between hab worlds and life. And then, yeah, again, bare rocky surfaces, newborn planets that could branch out into abiotic baselines. Next slide. And speaking of abiotic baselines, here this all deals with all the setup that could create a false positive, and or to determine what other processes are at play that could fool us in one way or another. And so there is a study of the inner habitable zone, redox baseline, runaway greenhouse, isotopolog. There is a lot going on here too. And of course, there is also a lot of connection with other petals too. And then with the next slide, we can conclude with the more performance-driven topic. Again, here also quite a lot of progress made because it's tightly connected to the definition of the requirements for the mission. And you see here there's the photobombing project that Drinor had showcased yesterday, but then also the target database, the signal of exomoons, and then again null results and synergies with hab worlds, and both in terms of characterization and known exoplanets. But there is a lot more going on around here which is in a way at the edge between science and instrument science. Next slide. Right, so how I made this plot was basically was all based out of the Market Up project. This is our main tool for the life science team. We have a repository on Google Drive where you can add your own project, your idea for a project, and you can start looking for people if you need help to carry out your projects and so on. So essentially, we have a document for each one of these. And so if you have a special idea, you want to first maybe check what's already there in the Market Up project, because there's a high chance that someone else has thought of something similar. So you can reach out to that person or that group and then start working with that. So this is meant to foster some collaborations within the group. Next slide. If there is not anything that looks like the idea you have, then there is the life Market Up projects template that you're free to fill up and send to us, so that we can upload it to the Market Up projects. And from then on, your project is there, and we'll assume it is going to be developed in time, and people that are interested can contact you. If you need additional suggestions or expertise, you're always free to tell us that you want to talk about it during one of our meetings, and we will obviously let you. We give you the floor to pitch your project and/or find more collaborators within the project. And speaking of science meetings, next slide. This is the schedule, the way it looks right now. this is already settled up to the early next year. We see that next time we're gonna have the life science team onboarding meeting. So this is the perfect time to join the life science team meeting, which will go through in more detail about all the procedures and the processes that the life science team has. And a normal meeting has normally one highlight talk, which is a talk of a paper or a project that's close to submission, that's going to be lasting 10 plus 5 minutes for questions, and then 2 project updates, very short updates. So you don't need to provide slides necessarily, but it would be nice to periodically have updates on your projects as time goes on. So be aware that we will reach out to you periodically to schedule these meetings. Right, I think next slide. And yeah, this is it from our side. If you want to be included in the science team, again, this is the perfect time because we will have the onboarding meeting next time at the beginning of December. And so feel free to reach out to us through email, and we will add you to the mailing list, and you'll be able to get all the information accordingly. And that's it from us, I think, Tim. Here.
Any questions about this, or any discussion that you might want to conduct here as the science team, Eleonora? Maybe you have questions for us.
Do we have questions?
I mean, to the community, maybe not to us.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Jose, for the links. Great. Yeah,
Marcos has a question. Yes.
Yeah, thanks very much for this nice summary. So I'll just ask a question that sort of connects to what Floris talked about earlier about other science cases, right? Because it's clear that we have lots and lots of progress on the exoplanet and life side, and maybe not so clear that we have progress on other sciences. So are there any, like, what are your thoughts about that?
So right now, I didn't have critical mass from the projects that were there to create another petal. So it would have looked a little bit, I don't know, a little bit weird. So I think that this effort that I really tried to put together for this meeting is just the beginning. I think we're gonna have a much more differentiated infographic, or at least we will have a clearer idea of what are the areas that we want to develop, because this is part of the exercise. And I think in the next meeting, in the onboarding meeting, and periodically over time in the science team meeting, I think we will refer to the distributions, the science space, try to cover as much as we can with more projects. So this will definitely help populate that petal. So next time maybe we have 5 petals. Who knows?